In this video, I'm going to give you 6 neat techniques on how to keep your feet warm when you're camping, hiking, and climbing in the outdoors in the cold. My name is Aaron Linsdow. I've explored a lot of the world, and I've been into some seriously cold places like Antarctica and Greenland, and I've had some seriously cold feet. And I'm here to give you some thoughts on how to keep your feet warm so you don't suffer like I have suffered in the cold. The first tip is to make sure, if you can avoid it, don't camp right after a storm, because what happens is as a storm moves through, all the energy in the atmosphere does its storm thing, blizzard, lightning, whatever the fact, but when that energy departs, typically the temperatures can plunge 20 if not 30 degrees, making the atmosphere far, far colder than during a storm. So this is a key point for your safety and comfort, is that your 30-degree sleeping bag may be perfectly adequate, but if a cold front moves through and storms, the temperature could drop to 5 degrees and you are going to freeze your feet, your head, your body in your sleeping bag, because the temperature can unexpectedly drop with those clear skies where the energy is radiated out. That's something you definitely want to avoid. The second tip is to avoid camping in marshy, moist areas if at all possible, because where there's a lot of plant life and water running through the area, the air will be much more humid, and your sleeping bag will get wet, your sweaters will get wet, your tent will get wet, you will get wet, and your feet will get wet, and that means cold feet. So definitely do everything you can to avoid camping in marshy, moist areas if at all possible, to keep your feet warmer. The third tip is make sure to avoid sleeping in minor depressions in the landscape. Even though sometimes it can be very tempting to get out of the wind and just put your tent in a little bit of a depression in the area, what happens is cold air tends to sink into an area and push warmer air out. So if you're in just this little, say, 30-foot wide depression, you're actually sleeping in the coldest part of the landscape, and you're going to have a very unenjoyable night because your feet are going to be cold, because your sleeping bag may be adequate for the air temperature above, but that 5-degree change of cold air sinking into the area can make all the difference. Before I give you tip number 4, at the end of the video, please like and comment on it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. This helps me bring more information to you. And you can also learn more about this whole series on how to keep your feet warm. There's a link below to the playlist of all these videos I've created, over I think 80 or 90 ways to keep your feet warm while camping. And also I have a book on how to keep your feet warm in the cold that gives you all the tips and heavy amount of details on keeping your tootsies warm to make sure everything stays toasty. The fourth tip is to avoid camping near creeks, streams, rivers, and lakes. Even though it's very romantic to have this nice tent right next to a lakeside or a creek or whatever the case may be, that is going to be the coldest area in your life, because that water moving about actually generates a little bit of moisture, and that moisture gets into the air and it penetrates your sleeping bag, it penetrates your jackets, it creates frost all over everything. Also, water tends to be at the lowest point in the landscape, so you're actually sleeping at the lowest, coldest point in the entire area. So definitely, if you can, avoid sleeping near those water bodies. The fifth tip is make sure that when you're in your tent and you've got this set up, do not have your tent set up in a wind tunnel. And what do I mean by a wind tunnel? Well, if you're sleeping between a whole bunch of trees and there's just this straight line of space, or you're in a couple between some rocks or some other geographic or geologic structure where wind can just blow through it and you'd be like, oh my gosh. Sleeping in a wind tunnel can be the most miserable experience ever because, sorry, in the itchy nose, is because all of a sudden a little bit of air movement, when it's compressed into a small area, actually causes that air to move much faster, blowing air through your tent, blowing air over your sleeping bag, and freezing you or your feet. So you definitely want to avoid sleeping in wind tunnels whenever possible. And tip number 6 in this video is make sure that before you begin setting up your tent, don't step off of your skis, your snowshoes, your crampons, or whatever until you have everything prepared in your camping area. Because once you step off your snowshoes, your skis, your crampons, or whatever, your feet directly contact the ground and that cold begins sucking the heat right through your boots. Even though I've got these La Sportiva cubes and they do really well, as soon as I stand on the ground at 0 degrees, whew, my feet freeze. Even though these Norwegian boots are crazy expensive and they're very well designed, my feet still freeze when I'm standing on a glacier at minus 40 degrees. So I do everything I can to do as much work as I can on my skis or my snowshoes or crampons before stepping off and making my camp without my tent. Because once you step on that ice, a clock begins ticking where your feet will only last so long before they're absolutely frozen purple. I've had it happen. It's not pleasant, so it's highly motivating to make sure to prepare everything you can before you step off your gear. My name is Aaron Linsdau. I'm a polar explorer and professional adventurer. I hope this video has been helpful to you. Please like and comment on it and subscribe to the channel. Check out my videos and a link below to all my different videos on how to keep your feet warm. And check out my book, How to Keep Your Feet Warm in the Cold. Thank you very much for watching and enjoy your warm feet.